The blizzard howled with unforgiving fury as Olivia Summers clutched her 5-year-old son Henry to her chest, her thin shawl offering little protection against the biting Wyoming winter of 1878. Tears froze on her cheeks as she stumbled through the deepening snow, the small bundle of belongings on her back growing heavier with each desperate step. Her husband's grave was 3 days behind her now, and the promise of a new beginning in Willow Creek seemed more distant than ever as night descended and the temperature plummeted. "Just a little further, Henry," she whispered, though she had no idea where they were heading. The abandoned trapper's cabin she'd spotted from the ridge was their only hope, and as she pushed open the rotting door, she nearly collapsed with relief at finding it empty. The cabin was barely standing, a dilapidated shell with gaps in the walls and a partially caved-in roof, but it would shelter them from the direct assault of the wind. With trembling hands, Olivia gathered what scraps of wood she could find and built a meager fire in the stone hearth. The flames sputtered weakly, providing barely enough light to see Henry's pale face, much less any warmth. "Mama, I'm cold," Henry whispered, his small body racked with shivers despite being wrapped in their only blanket. His lips were turning an alarming shade of blue, and terror seized Olivia's heart. "I know, my love. The fire will grow stronger soon," she lied, knowing they had little fuel to last the night. She held him closer, rocking back and forth, humming a lullaby to distract them both from the dire situation. 4 months ago, they had been a happy family in Illinois. Then typhoid had taken her husband Thomas, leaving them with mounting debts that forced her to sell everything to make the journey west to her cousin's homestead. Now, lost in the wilderness with a failing fire and a sick child, Olivia feared she had led them both to their deaths. The sound of approaching hoofbeats cut through the howling wind, sending a jolt of fear through Olivia's body. Bandits or worse could be upon them, and she had nothing with which to defend herself and Henry. She quickly extinguished the fire, plunging them into darkness, and retreated to the farthest corner of the cabin, holding Henry close. The door creaked open, and a tall figure filled the entrance, silhouetted against the snow. Olivia held her breath as heavy boots crossed the threshold, spurs jingling softly with each step. "Hello," a deep voice called out. "I saw the smoke from your fire. Is anyone in here?" Olivia remained silent, her heart pounding. The stranger struck a match, illuminating a weathered face beneath a snow-dusted hat. His eyes scanned the cabin until they landed on her huddled form. "Madam," he said, his voice gentler now, "you don't need to be afraid. I'm not here to hurt you." "Please," Olivia whispered, her voice barely audible, "we have nothing of value." The man took a step closer, and in the fading light of the match, she saw concern etched on his features. "I'm not looking for anything, madam, just seeking shelter from this storm, same as you." He lit a lantern he carried, flooding the small space with warm light. Henry coughed weakly in her arms, drawing the stranger's attention. "Your boy doesn't sound too good," he observed, removing his heavy coat. He crouched down by the hearth and rekindled the fire, adding wood from a supply he'd brought in. "This place is barely standing, not fit for a woman and child in this weather." "We had no choice," Olivia replied, watching him warily as the fire grew stronger. The man nodded, understanding in his eyes. "My name's Knox Alderman. I've got a ranch about 5 miles east of here." He glanced at Henry, who was shivering violently despite the returning fire. "Your child is shivering by the fire. He needs more than this broken-down shelter can offer." Knox removed his scarf and approached slowly, holding it out to her. "May I?" Olivia hesitated, then nodded. Knox wrapped the warm wool around Henry's shoulders, his movements gentle for such large, work-hardened hands. "He'll know warmth and kindness here," Knox said quietly, looking into Olivia's eyes. "But not in this cabin. My place isn't far. It's solid, warm, with plenty of food and medicine if your boy needs it. I'd be honored to offer you shelter until this storm passes. Why would you help strangers?" Olivia asked, suspicion mingling with desperate hope. Knox's expression grew somber. "Because 6 years ago I was caught in a blizzard much like this one. A family took me in, saved my life. I swore I'd do the same if I ever had the chance." He stood and offered his hand. "I understand your caution, madam, but that boy needs warmth, and he needs it now." Olivia looked down at Henry's pale face and made her decision. "My name is Olivia Summers. This is my son Henry," Knox nodded. "Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Summers, though I wish it were under better circumstances." "Can you ride?" "Yes, but all our possessions, we'll take what you can carry. The rest can wait until the storm breaks." Outside, Knox's horse stood patiently, a sturdy palomino accustomed to the harsh Wyoming winters. Knox helped Olivia mount, then carefully handed Henry up to her before swinging into the saddle behind them. He wrapped his heavy coat around all three of them, creating a cocoon of warmth. "Hold tight," he instructed, and they set off into the swirling snow. The journey seemed endless as they pushed through the blinding whiteness, Knox navigating with an instinctive knowledge of the land. Olivia clutched Henry to her chest, silently praying that she hadn't made a terrible mistake trusting this stranger. Finally, lights appeared through the curtain of snow, a substantial ranch house with smoke rising from its chimney. As they approached, a barn and several outbuildings took shape, all solid and well-maintained. Knox guided his horse to the main house and dismounted, lifting Henry from Olivia's arms with remarkable tenderness. "Let's get you both inside," he said, helping Olivia down and leading them to the door. The warmth that greeted them as they entered the house made Olivia's frozen cheeks sting and her eyes water. A large fireplace dominated the main room, with comfortable furniture arranged around it. The smell of something savory filled the air. An older woman emerged from what appeared to be the kitchen, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, her expression curious but kind. "Knox, I was beginning to worry. Who have you brought us?" "Mrs. Carmichael, this is Mrs. Summers and her son Henry. I found them in the old Pearson cabin, nearly frozen. The boy needs warmth and possibly medicine." Mrs. Carmichael's expression shifted to concern. "Of course, bring him by the fire. I'll heat some broth and prepare the guest room." She bustled away efficiently. Knox set Henry on a comfortable chair near the fire, and Olivia kneeled beside him, removing his wet clothes while Knox fetched blankets. The boy's shivering had lessened, but his breathing was labored. "He's burning up," Olivia said, placing a hand on his forehead. Knox returned with blankets and a small wooden box. "Mrs. Carmichael has medicines. She's nursed me and the ranch hands through plenty of fevers." He opened the box, revealing neatly organized bottles and pouches. "She was a nurse during the war." Mrs. Carmichael returned with a steaming mug. "Willow bark tea with honey," she explained, handing it to Olivia. "It will help with the fever. I've prepared the guest room with fresh linens and extra blankets." As Olivia coaxed Henry to sip the tea, Knox disappeared outside to tend to his horse. Mrs. Carmichael sat beside her, a comforting presence. "You're welcome to stay as long as needed," the older woman said. "Knox doesn't bring strays home unless they truly need help." "Are you his mother?" Olivia asked. Mrs. Carmichael chuckled. "No, dear. I'm his housekeeper, though sometimes I mother him more than he'd like. He's a good man, Mrs. Summers, one of the best I know." When Knox returned, his clothes dusted with fresh snow, he carried Olivia's few belongings. "Storm's getting worse," he reported. "Good thing we made it back when we did." After Henry had finished the tea, Knox showed them to a comfortable bedroom with a small adjoining room. The smaller room was meant as a nursery, he explained. "Never had cause to use it, but the bed should fit your boy just fine." Olivia was overwhelmed by the kindness. "Mr. Alderman, I don't know how to thank you." "Knox, please, and no thanks needed. Get some rest. We'll talk more in the morning." That night, as Henry slept peacefully for the first time in days, his fever already beginning to break under Mrs. Carmichael's care, Olivia sat by his bedside and wondered about the solitary rancher who had saved their lives. His home was comfortable but distinctly masculine, with no sign of a wife or family. The nursery, prepared but never used, spoke of expectations unfulfilled. There was kindness in his eyes, but also a shadow of something deeper, loss, perhaps, or loneliness. Outside, the blizzard continued to rage, but for the first time since Thomas's death, Olivia felt safe. Whether that feeling would last beyond the storm, she couldn't say, but for now, it was enough that her son was warm and they had found shelter in this unexpected haven. Dawn broke clear and cold, the storm having blown itself out during the night. Olivia woke to find Henry's fever gone, color returned to his cheeks as he slept peacefully. She dressed quickly and found Mrs. Carmichael in the kitchen, kneading dough with practiced movements. "Good morning, Mrs. Summers." The housekeeper greeted her warmly. "How's the boy?" Much better, thanks to you, Olivia replied gratefully. His fever has broken. Wonderful news. Children are remarkably resilient. Mrs. Carmichael gestured to the stove where coffee bubbled in a pot. Help yourself. Knox is already out seeing to the animals. The storm did some damage to the fences, I'm afraid. Olivia poured herself a cup, savoring the rich aroma. I'd like to help if I may, to earn our keep while we're here. The older woman gave her an appraising look. Can you cook? Yes, very well. And I can clean, so tend gardens, whatever needs doing. Mrs. Carmichael nodded approvingly. Well then, you can help me prepare breakfast. Knox and the hands will be ravenous when they come in. She passed Olivia an apron. We'll be feeding 6 hungry men, not counting your little one when he wakes. For the next hour they worked side by side, frying bacon, mixing biscuit dough, and scrambling eggs. Mrs. Carmichael was an excellent teacher, and Olivia found herself relaxing in the warm kitchen, almost forgetting the precarious nature of their situation. Henry wandered in just as they were setting the table, his hair mussed from sleep but his eyes bright and alert. Mama, I'm hungry. Olivia lifted him onto a chair. Good morning, sweetheart. This is Mrs. Carmichael. She helped make you better last night. Henry regarded the housekeeper solemnly. Thank you, madam. My throat doesn't hurt anymore. You're quite welcome, young man, Mrs. Carmichael replied, placing a small plate of food before him. Eat up now. Growing boys need their strength. The door opened, bringing a blast of cold air and the sound of men's voices. Knox entered first, followed by 5 ranch hands of varying ages. They stomped snow from their boots and hung their coats by the door, the easy camaraderie of men who worked together evident in their banter. Knox spotted Olivia and Henry at the table and touched the brim of his hat. Mrs. Summers, Henry, good to see you both looking better this morning. Thanks to your kindness, Mr. Alderman, Olivia replied. Knox, he reminded her with a small smile before turning to introduce his men. These are my ranch hands, Illy my foreman, brothers Patrick and Daniel, Samuel our youngest, and Walter, who's been with me since I bought this place. The men nodded respectfully to Olivia, curiosity in their eyes but no judgment. They took their places at the table with minimal fuss, and Knox seated himself at the head. Mrs. Summers and her son will be staying with us until they're recovered and the weather improves, Knox explained simply. There are guests. No further explanation was needed or asked for. The men dug into their breakfast with enthusiasm, complimenting Mrs. Carmichael and to Olivia's surprise her biscuits as well. These are mighty fine, madam, Illy said, reaching for a third. Different from Mrs. Carmichael's usual. Mrs. Summers made those, Mrs. Carmichael informed him with a hint of pride. She's handy in a kitchen. The meal continued with casual conversation about ranch business and repairs needed after the storm. Olivia noticed how Knox listened to each man's report and suggestions, treating them more as partners than employees. He asked Henry gentle questions about what animals he liked and whether he'd ever seen a real cowboy before, drawing the shy boy out with patient interest. After breakfast, the men returned to their work, and Mrs. Carmichael showed Olivia around the house a substantial 2-story structure with 6 bedrooms, a study, dining room, kitchen, and comfortable sitting room. Everything was clean and well-maintained, if somewhat sparse in decoration. Knox built most of this himself, Mrs. Carmichael explained as they toured. Had just a small cabin when he first bought the land 8 years ago, added on as the ranch grew profitable. He seems young to have accomplished so much, Olivia observed. He's 32. Started young with nothing but determination and a knowledge of cattle. Works harder than any man I've known. The housekeeper paused, considering her next words. He's a private man, doesn't speak much of his past, but I know he came west after the war with not much more than the clothes on his back and nightmares that still wake him sometimes. Olivia nodded, understanding. So many carried such burdens from that terrible conflict. What brought you and your boy out in that storm? Mrs. Carmichael asked gently. Olivia hesitated, then decided honesty was owed for the kindness shown. My husband died 4 months ago, typhoid, left us with debts I couldn't pay. I sold what I could to make the journey to Willow Creek where my cousin has a homestead. We got lost in the storm. Mrs. Carmichael patted her hand sympathetically. Willow Creek is 30 miles southwest of here. When the weather improves, I'm sure Knox will see you safely there. I don't want to impose further. You've all been so kind already. Nonsense. Winter in Wyoming is no time for a woman and child to be traveling alone. Besides, she added with a twinkle in her eye, it's nice having another woman around, and that boy of yours has already brightened the place. Later that afternoon, Olivia watched from the window as Henry followed Knox around the barnyard, the rancher showing him the horses and explaining their names and temperaments. Knox lifted the boy onto a gentle mare, holding him securely while Henry's delighted laughter carried across the yard. For the first time since Thomas's death, Olivia felt a flutter of something beyond grief and worry, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire crackling in the hearth behind her. The days settled into a comfortable routine. Olivia insisted on earning her keep, helping Mrs. Carmichael with cooking and household tasks. Henry recovered completely from his illness and became a fixture around the ranch, trailing after Knox or the other men, absorbing everything about ranch life with the insatiable curiosity of childhood. A week after their arrival, Knox found Olivia in the sitting room, mending a torn shirt by lamplight after Henry had gone to bed. "May I join you?" he asked, hesitating in the doorway. "Of course. It's your home," she replied, making room for him on the sofa. Knox sat, his large frame dwarfing the furniture. He seemed uncharacteristically nervous, turning his hat in his hands before placing it on the table. "Mrs. Carmichael tells me you're planning to continue to Willow Creek as soon as the weather permits." "Yes. My cousin Rebecca and her husband have offered us a place to stay until I can find work." Olivia set down her mending. "I can't thank you enough for all you've done, Knox. It's been no hardship," he said quickly. "In fact, having you and Henry here has been." He paused, searching for the right words. "It's brought life to this place. The men have noticed it too." Olivia felt a blush warming her cheeks. "You have a beautiful home and a successful ranch. You should be proud of what you've built." "It's a good ranch," Knox agreed, looking around the room as if seeing it through new eyes. "But it's been just a place to work and sleep until recently. Having a family here," he cleared his throat. "What I mean to say is, there's no rush for you to leave." Their eyes met, and Olivia saw something vulnerable in his gaze, hope mingled with the fear of rejection. "That's very kind," she said carefully, "but I wouldn't want to take advantage of your generosity." "It's not just generosity," Knox admitted, his voice low. "I've grown fond of having you here, both of you. Henry is a fine boy, and you—" He took a deep breath. "I know it's too soon. You're still grieving your husband, and we've only known each other a short while, but I wanted you to know that you have options beyond Willow Creek." Olivia's heart beat faster. "What exactly are you suggesting, Knox?" "For now, just that you stay on as my housekeeper if you're willing. Mrs. Carmichael isn't getting any younger, and she's mentioned wanting to reduce her duties. You'd have your own space, earn a proper wage." Henry could continue learning about ranch life, which he seems to enjoy. Knox met her eyes again. "And perhaps with time we might see if there could be something more between us, only if you wished it." His proposal was unexpected yet delivered with such honest dignity that Olivia couldn't take offense. This was no improper advance but a sincere offer from a man who understood the value of patience. "I don't know what to say," she admitted. "You don't need to decide now," Knox assured her. "The offer stands whenever you're ready, and if your answer is no, I'll personally escort you to your cousin's when the time comes." Olivia thought of Henry's laughter as he helped feed the chickens that morning, of the sparkle in his eyes when Knox had taught him to ride the gentle mare. She thought of her own growing comfort in this house, the respect she'd been shown, the sense of purpose she'd found. "I think," she said slowly, "that staying on as housekeeper might be good for both Henry and me, at least for a while. As for the rest, I need time." Relief softened Knox's features. "Time is something we have plenty of out here." He stood, retrieving his hat. "Good night, Olivia." "Good night, Knox," she replied, watching him leave with the strange sense that her life had just taken a significant turn. The winter months passed in a flurry of activity. Olivia wrote to her cousin in Willow Creek, explaining her situation and decision to stay at the Alderman Ranch. Rebecca's reply was supportive, expressing relief that Olivia and Henry had found safe harbor and extending an open invitation to visit when travel was easier. As the new housekeeper, Olivia reorganized the kitchen storage, implemented a more efficient laundry system, and added feminine touches to the main room's curtains she sewed herself, wildflowers arranged in mason jars when the first blooms appeared beneath the melting snow. Mrs. Carmichael, grateful for the reduced workload, became a mentor and friend, teaching Olivia the particulars of running a ranch household. Knox proved to be a fair and generous employer, but he was also true to his word about giving Olivia time and space. Their interactions remained cordial and increasingly warm, but he made no advances beyond occasional lingering glances that sent unexpected shivers down her spine. Henry thrived in the ranch environment. Knox began teaching him to ride properly on the gentle mare, which was now his horse in the boy's mind. Ellie showed him how to help with the chickens and collect eggs without getting pecked. Even taciturn Walter spent time whittling wooden animals for the child, a hobby none of the men had known about until Henry's arrival had drawn it out. One evening in early April, Olivia found Knox in his study, reviewing the ranch ledgers with a furrowed brow. She hesitated in the doorway, a cup of coffee in hand. "May I come in?" she asked. Knox looked up, his expression immediately lightening. "Of course." He cleared a space on his cluttered desk for the coffee. "Thank you. I was just going over the figures for spring cattle sales." "Is everything all right? You looked concerned." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Just planning. The ranch is doing well enough, but I've been thinking of expanding, buying the Henderson property that adjoins our northeast pastures. It would mean a significant investment, though." Olivia sat in the chair opposite his desk. "Thomas, my husband, taught bookkeeping at the school in our town. I helped him sometimes. Perhaps I could look at your figures." Knox seemed surprised but pushed the ledger toward her. "I'd appreciate another perspective." For the next hour, they worked together, Olivia asking questions about expenses and projected income, while Knox explained the rhythms of the cattle business, the buying and selling cycles, the costs of winter feed versus summer grazing, the variables of weather and market prices. "You have a good head for business," Knox remarked as they finished. "Your suggestions about delaying some purchases to build cash reserves make sense." "You've built something remarkable here," Olivia said sincerely. "It's clear how much thought and care you put into every decision." Their eyes met across the desk, and for a moment the air between them seemed charged with unspoken feelings. Knox was the first to look away, clearing his throat. "It's getting late," he said. "Thank you for your help, Olivia, and the coffee." As spring gave way to summer, Olivia found herself watching Knox more often, the way he handled horses with a gentle authority, how he listened intently when his men brought problems to him, the patience he showed with Henry. She noticed other things too, the way sunlight caught in his dark hair, how his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the strength in his hands and the surprising gentleness they could convey. She was falling in love with him, she realized one morning while watching him teach Henry how to groom a horse. The knowledge didn't frighten her as she might have expected. Instead, it felt like the natural conclusion to their months of shared meals, conversations, and the quiet building of trust between them. But memories of Thomas still visited her at unexpected moments, the sound of his laugh, the way he'd read stories to Henry, his dreams for their future together. Guilt followed these memories, as if her growing feelings for Knox somehow betrayed her first love, Mrs. Carmichael found her one afternoon sitting alone on the porch, lost in thought. "Penny for your thoughts," the older woman said, easing herself into the chair beside Olivia's. "I'm not sure they're worth that much," Olivia replied with a wan smile. Mrs. Carmichael studied her face. "You're thinking about your husband, and Knox." Olivia looked at her in surprise. "I've been around long enough to recognize that particular expression," Mrs. Carmichael explained gently. "The one that says your heart is pulling you forward while your loyalty to the past holds you back." "Is it wrong to have feelings for Knox when Thomas has been gone less than a year?" Olivia asked softly. "Grief doesn't run on a timetable, child, and love isn't a limited resource that you use up." The housekeeper patted Olivia's hand. "Your Thomas sounds like he was a good man who loved you and Henry very much. Would he want you to be alone, or would he want you to find happiness again?" Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. "He always said family was everything to him. He wanted Henry to grow up with love and security." "There's your answer, then." Mrs. Carmichael stood with a little groan as her knees protested. "Love when it comes to you, Olivia, it's rare enough in this world." The summer cattle drive took Knox and most of the men away for 3 weeks in July. The house felt strangely empty without them, especially without Knox's steady presence. Henry asked for him daily, and Olivia found herself watching the horizon each evening, hoping for the dust cloud that would signal their return. When they finally rode in, trail worn and dusty but successful in their venture, the ranch seemed to come alive again. That night, after a celebratory dinner, Olivia walked outside to enjoy the cool evening air. She found Knox sitting alone on a bench near the barn, looking up at the stars. "May I join you?" she asked, echoing his words from months before. He smiled and moved over. "Please." Olivia sat beside him, conscious of his warmth in the cooling night. "The cattle drive went well, better than expected. Prices were good in Cheyenne." He looked at her sideways. "I missed this place while I was gone, missed you and Henry." "We missed you too," she admitted. "Henry asked about you every day." "Just Henry?" Knox asked softly. Olivia gathered her courage. "No, not just Henry." She turned to face him. "Knox, I've been thinking a lot while you were away. About the future, about us." Hope lit his eyes. "And what conclusions did you reach?" "That life is unpredictable and sometimes terribly short. That Henry deserves a father figure who cares for him as much as you do." She took a deep breath. "That I've fallen in love with you and I'm tired of pretending otherwise." Knox reached for her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against hers. "Olivia, I've loved you since that first morning I saw you in my kitchen, flour on your cheek, making biscuits like you'd always belonged there." He brought her hand to his lips. "I don't want to replace Thomas in your heart. I just want to build something new with you if you'll have me." "I would like that very much," she whispered. Their first kiss was tender, a promise exchanged under the vast Wyoming sky. When they finally drew apart, Knox rested his forehead against hers. "I should speak to Henry," he said. "Ask his permission properly." Olivia smiled, touched by his consideration for her son's feelings. "He adores you already, but yes, I think he'd like to be asked." The next morning, Knox took Henry fishing at the creek that ran through the property. When they returned, Henry was bubbling with excitement, running to find Olivia in the garden. "Mama, Mr. Knox asked if he could marry us and be my new pa, and I said yes. Is that all right? Can we say yes?" Olivia looked up to see Knox approaching more slowly, an anxious smile on his face. She stood, brushing dirt from her hands, her heart full. "If that's what you want, Henry, then yes, we can say yes." Knox reached them, his expression shifting to one of pure joy. He knelt down to be at eye level with both Henry and Olivia, taking her hands in his. "Olivia Summers, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Of making this house a home with you and Henry? I promise to cherish you both, to provide for you, to be the kind of husband and father you both deserve." "Yes," Olivia said simply, her voice steady though tears of happiness threatened. "Yes, Knox Alderman, I will marry you." Henry cheered, throwing his arms around both of them, and for the first time since Thomas's death, Olivia felt that the future held more promise than pain. They were married in late August in the town church, with Mrs. Carmichael, the ranch hands, and a few neighbors as witnesses. Henry stood proudly beside them, holding the rings on a small cushion Mrs. Carmichael had sewn for the occasion. Olivia wore a new dress of pale blue, and Knox was freshly shaved and nervous in his best suit, his eyes never leaving her face as they spoke their vows. The simple ceremony was followed by a celebration at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and lanterns strung from tree to tree. There was music from Walter's previously hidden fiddle and Daniel's harmonica, dancing on the packed earth, and enough food to feed twice their number thanks to Mrs. Carmichael's planning and the contributions of neighboring ranches. As the evening deepened and stars emerged, Knox led Olivia away from the festivities to a quiet spot by the garden she had planted in spring. "Are you happy, Mrs. Alderman?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist. "Completely," she replied, leaning into his embrace. "Are you?" "More than I ever thought possible." He kissed her forehead. "I have something to show you." Taking her hand, he led her toward the house, but instead of entering, he guided her around to where an addition was under construction. "The men and I have been working on it whenever we could spare time," he explained. "It will be a proper bedroom for Henry with his own window and a desk for when he's older and needs to study. And beside it," he continued, leading her further along, "will be a nursery." Olivia looked at him questioningly. "I hope one day when you're ready we might fill it," Knox said softly. I never thought I'd have a family of my own, Olivia. Meeting you and Henry changed everything for me. Olivia felt tears well up, but they were tears of joy. I would like nothing more than to fill this home with children, Knox, our children, alongside Henry. He gathered her close, his kiss deeper now that they were alone, a promise of the night to come. I love you, Olivia Alderman, and I love you, Knox Alderman, she whispered against his lips. Later, as the celebration wound down and guests departed, Knox carried a sleeping Henry to his temporary bedroom. Olivia watched from the doorway as her husband gently tucked the blankets around her son, brushing dark hair from his forehead with a tenderness that made her heart ache with love. "Good night, son," Knox whispered, and Henry stirred just enough to mumble, "Night, Pa." The simple exchange brought fresh tears to Olivia's eyes. When Knox joined her in the hallway, she saw that his eyes were damp as well. "He called me Pa," Knox said, wonder in his voice. "Because that's who you are to him now," Olivia replied, taking his hand and leading him toward their bedroom. "And who you'll be to all our children." Their first night as husband and wife was everything Olivia had hoped for: tender, passionate, a joining of bodies that mirrored the joining of their lives. Afterward, lying in Knox's arms as moonlight filtered through the curtains she had made, Olivia thought of the desperate night in the trapper's cabin that had led them here. "Do you know what I remember most about the night we met?" she asked softly. Knox stroked her hair. "What's that?" "You looked at Henry, shivering by that pitiful fire, and you said, 'He'll know warmth and kindness here.' You meant in your home, but you've given us so much more than shelter, Knox. You've given us belonging." He pulled her closer. "You gave me the same gift, Olivia. This house was just a building until you and Henry filled it with life." The seasons turned, marking the passage of time as the Alderman family grew and flourished. The following spring brought the birth of their daughter, Grace, a tiny miracle with her father's dark hair and her mother's determined spirit. Henry took to his role as big brother with pride, helping with the baby whenever allowed and explaining ranch operations to her with solemn importance even before she could understand a word. Knox expanded the ranch, eventually purchasing the Henderson property he had discussed with Olivia that night in his study. Under their joint management, for Olivia proved to have a remarkable head for the business side of ranching. The Alderman Ranch became known throughout the territory for its quality stock and fair dealings. Mrs. Carmichael stayed on, delighting in her role as honorary grandmother to the children, teaching Olivia family recipes and the secrets of her medicinal remedies. The ranch hands became extended family, each finding their place in the growing household. Eli married a schoolteacher from town, building a cabin on the property and starting his own family. The brothers Patrick and Daniel remained steady presences as the children grew. Walter's previously hidden talents continued to emerge, not just whittling and fiddle playing, but storytelling that enthralled the children on winter evenings. 2 years after Grace's birth, Olivia gave birth to twin boys, Matthew and James, who grew into rambunctious additions that kept everyone on their toes. Knox proved to be a natural father, firm but loving, teaching his children the value of hard work alongside the importance of compassion and integrity. Henry, now approaching his teenage years, blossomed under Knox's guidance. Though he never forgot his birth father, Olivia made sure of that, keeping Thomas's memory alive through stories, and the few keepsakes she had salvaged. He grew to love Knox deeply, the two developing a bond that was uniquely their own. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Olivia and Knox stood on the porch of their expanded home, watching their 4 children play in the yard as the sun set behind the mountains. "Did you ever imagine this would be your life?" Olivia asked, leaning against her husband's solid strength. Knox shook his head, a smile playing at his lips. "Not once. I thought I'd live and die alone on this ranch with nothing but cattle and horses to show for my years." He kissed the top of her head. "Thank God for that blizzard. And for a cowboy with a good heart who couldn't ride past a mother and child in need," Olivia added. They stood in comfortable silence, watching as Henry, now 12, showed his 5-year-old sister how to throw a lasso, the twins toddling after them with determined steps. The setting sun bathed everything in golden light, from the well-maintained buildings to the thriving garden, from the healthy cattle in the distance to the family at the center of it all. I need to thank you, Olivia, Knox said suddenly. She looked up at him, puzzled. For what? For trusting me that night, for giving us a chance, for everything you've brought into my life. His voice grew husky with emotion. I was existing before you came, now I'm living. Olivia reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the familiar lines at the corners of his eyes. We saved each other, I think, Knox nodded, turning to press a kiss to her palm. That we did, my love, that we did. As darkness settled over the Wyoming landscape, stars appearing one by one in the vast sky above, the Alderman family gathered inside their home. The fire in the hearth burned steady and strong, casting its light over the room where a family born of chance, kindness, and love made plans for tomorrow and all the days to follow. Henry, sitting at Knox's feet listening to a story about the early days of the ranch, leaned against his adoptive father's knee with complete trust and affection. Knox's hand rested on the boy's shoulder, the unconscious gesture speaking volumes about their relationship. Watching them, Olivia felt a sense of peace she had once thought lost forever. From the depths of grief and desperation had come a life rich with love, purpose, and belonging. A family forged not just by blood but by choice and commitment. Later that night, after the children were asleep and the house had settled into silence, Knox found Olivia standing by the window in their bedroom, gazing out at the moonlit landscape. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, coming to stand behind her, arms encircling her waist. "The night we met," she replied, leaning back against him. "How close we came to never finding each other if you hadn't seen the smoke from our fire." "But I did," Knox said simply, "and you were brave enough to trust a stranger with your son's life." "The best decision I ever made." Olivia turned in his arms to face him. "Do you know what Henry asked me today? He wanted to know if he could start using Alderman as his last name. He said he's proud to be your son and wants everyone to know it." Knox's eyes filled with emotion. "What did you tell him?" "That it would be an honor, but that he should also remember the name. Summers came from a good man who loved him very much. He said he wants to be Henry Summers Alderman to honor both his fathers." Knox nodded, unable to speak for a moment. When he found his voice, it was rough with feeling. "That boy has the wisest heart of anyone I've ever known. He learns from the best," Olivia said softly, reaching up to kiss her husband. 10 years later, the Alderman Ranch had grown into one of the most prosperous in the territory. The original house had been expanded again to accommodate their growing family. A fifth child, another daughter named Elizabeth, had joined them 3 years after the twins, and to provide space for the frequent visitors and celebrations that marked their life together. Henry, now 22, had recently returned from college in the East with a degree in business and agricultural science. He worked alongside Knox, bringing new ideas and techniques to the ranch operations while maintaining the principles and values on which the business had been built. Grace, at 15, was the image of her mother in both appearance and spirit, with a particular gift for horses that even Knox admitted surpassed his own. The twins, 13 and already tall for their age, were inseparable partners in both work and mischief. Little Elizabeth, at 10, was the family musician, having inherited Walter's love for the fiddle and Daniel's talent with the harmonica. On a warm September evening, as the extended Alderman family, including Mrs. Carmichael, now slowed by age but still sharp-witted and involved in family affairs, gathered for dinner, Knox stood at the head of the long table and raised his glass. "I'd like to propose a toast," he announced, his gaze moving over the beloved faces surrounding him before coming to rest on Olivia. 20 years ago today, I rode through a blizzard and found a mother and child in a broken-down cabin. I couldn't have known then that I was riding toward my future, toward everything that would give my life meaning and purpose." He smiled at Henry, now a man grown, sitting at his right hand. "I told your mother that night that you would know warmth and kindness here. What I couldn't tell her was how much warmth and kindness you would bring to this place, how all of you would transform not just this ranch but me." Knox's eyes returned to Olivia, who sat at the opposite end of the table, her face radiant with love and the satisfaction of a life well lived. "To my wife, who trusted a stranger with her most precious possession and then trusted him with her heart. To our children who fill this home with laughter and life, and to the storm that brought us together, May we never forget that sometimes our greatest blessings come disguised as our darkest moments. To family, Olivia added, raising her own glass, found and made and chosen. To family, echoed around the table as glasses clinked and smiles were exchanged. Later that evening, as the family dispersed to their various activities, Henry reviewing cattle prices with Ellie, Grace taking Elizabeth for a ride on the gentle mare that was now hers, the twins helping Daniel repair tack in the barn Knox, and Olivia walked hand in hand through the garden she had expanded over the years. 20 years, Knox marveled, looking around at the home they had built together. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I found you, and sometimes it feels like you've always been here. Both are true in their own way, Olivia said. Time is strange that way. They stopped by a small wooden bench Knox had built early in their marriage, now weathered and surrounded by the wildflowers Olivia had transplanted from the meadows. Sitting close together, they watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. Any regrets? Knox asked quietly. Olivia considered the question seriously. Only that Thomas never got to see the man Henry has become. He would have been so proud. She squeezed Knox's hand. But no regrets about the life we've built. Not one. Nor I, Knox agreed. Though sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd taken a different route that night, or if the storm had cleared sooner. I believe we would have found each other somehow, Olivia said with conviction. Some things are meant to be. As darkness fell and stars emerged, they remained on the bench, surrounded by the sounds of their ranch, distant laughter from the children, the low of cattle, the soft nickering of horses in the barn. The life they had created together from that desperate beginning in a snowstorm continued to unfold around them, rich with possibilities and the deepest kind of love. I'm the luckiest man alive, Knox whispered, drawing Olivia closer against the cooling evening air. And I the luckiest woman, she replied, resting her head on his shoulder. To think it all began with a mother and child shivering by a fire and a cowboy kind enough to stop. The best decision I ever made, Knox echoed her words from years before, kissing her temple. Together they sat as the moon rose over their land, their home, their legacy a testament to the enduring power of kindness offered in a moment of need, and the love that had grown from that simple act of humanity. In the years that followed, the story of how Knox and Olivia Alderman met became family legend, passed down to grandchildren and eventually great-grandchildren. It served as a reminder that even in the harshest circumstances, hope could be found, that strangers could become family, that love could bloom in the most unexpected places. And always at the heart of the story was the image of a shivering child by a failing fire and the promise from a kind-hearted cowboy. He'll know warmth and kindness here. A promise that had been kept and then some for all the years of their lives together.